do you think we should be raising the age of criminal responsibility? These poor young 12-year-olds have no idea that murder's wrong.
No, I actually think we should not be raising that age. I mean, what that will do, I mean, across the country at the moment, what we've got is young people as young as 13, out at 3 o'clock in the morning, robbing people, carrying knives, carrying guns, and all that will do is send a very, very clear message from the SNP to criminal gangs that you can exploit even further, because we've got an additional barrier in the way of the exploitation of young people. I think it shows that the SNP are completely out of touch.
So they will actually use kids for more crime if they do that?
I think so. I think it's an additional barrier, isn't it? I think these young people already are being exploited. I think if you take away the fear of responsibility, and it's a big topic, particularly among young people in schools, then I think it makes it easier for young people to be exploited.
I believe I'm right in saying that the SNP are very keen to push voting for 16-year-olds as well. So there appears to be a discrepancy between the idea that you are mentally sound enough to cast a vote at a national election, but you don't know that things like rape and murder are a problem. And I find that absolutely staggering. I mean, does there seem to be any logic for this for you? In your role there as Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, you must see some kids are hardened criminals, aren't they?
They are. And what we need to do is look after those children who are at fear of becoming hardened criminals. And there's a big piece of work, I think, to be done about services and making sure that police in particular are able to do the job that only the police can do. So we don't want to flood the system, particularly when it comes to things like ASB, which are trigger points into more serious criminal behaviour. And we need to not flood the system and look at things potentially like it's parents and the role that a parent has to play. Of course, not every young person has a positive role model in their life or an appropriate adult, but the vast majority do. And that's where I think we need to say to parents, look, we can't grip those at most risk of criminality, because for many of you, you don't know where your young people are, what they're doing, nor do you take responsibility.
Yeah, and look, hey, I haven't got kids. I completely understand that it must be incredibly difficult, especially if you've got a few of them, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions onto every single parent out there, but when I see stories about so-and-so, 14 years old, stabbed to death on the street at the age of that age, I think, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I think, what are the parents saying here? Where is this kid? Are they afraid of this particular kid? But I wonder whether or not this is a problem with how full our prisons are, and the SNP trying to say, well, look, instead of us doing anything about that, what we'll do is try to reduce the number of juvenile people who might end up in the prison system.
Well, potentially, but I think what the reality is prevention is better than cure, right? So what we really need to do is invest in young people in schools and the services that prevent young people from getting into that situation in the first place. A draconian kind of cut and saying we're going to just bump the age up of responsibility up to 18 is not going to do anything, I think.
We appear to have a situation at the moment where young people are not respecting the police in the way that they used to, and I think that is a deep shame. I don't think they respect authority in general, by the way, in the way that they used to. And you end up seeing really devastating videos online of young children in places like a McDonald's at whatever time in the morning when a police officer comes in and they basically just beat him up. And, that is a massive, massive problem. Will this just encourage them, do you think, to respect authority even less? I mean, this would be a massive win. If I was 16 years old and an out-and-out wronger, I would be looking at this now going, this is great news for me.
Well, I think, yeah, you might be right, actually, but the solution to that is probably making sure that there are more police on the streets and increased visibility. I know the government, without getting too political, the government have invested into that, 20,000 new police officers. We're in a situation in the country at the moment where we have the largest number of police officers on record. So there's some work to be done around that, but it also comes back to allowing the police to do the job that only the police can do, as I mentioned earlier, and freeing them up from some of the stuff that probably isn't within their responsibility. Mental health, for instance, falling under the budget of the NHS, of course, and of course some of the antisocial behaviour stuff where LAs could step in, more youth clubs, for instance, more investment in youth prevention from a local authority, not just calling on the police. Yeah,
I'll just come back to one final one on this. I mean, in your view then, people who are, let's say, 15 or 16 years old definitively know the difference between right and wrong. You don't think it's... At what point... I know not every case is the same, right? But if there's no mitigating circumstances, some kind of mental health issues or whatever, your average 16-year-old on the street should know the difference between that's criminal and that's not.
Well, you would hope so, and I think school is a really, really good place to install those values. As I said, not every young person has a positive role model in their lives, but actually I'd be looking at reducing the age, not increasing it. That transitional age from primary into secondary, year 7, is a really good age where schools, I think, are saying to young people, take responsibility for your actions, don't shift the blame.
Well, and you could teach it in school, couldn't you? You could say, right, when you get to secondary school, so you're like 10, 11 years old, right, you have a lesson on it, you have a few lessons on it, you're now criminally responsible. And there can be no grey area there. Look, thank you very much. Great stuff. Thank you very much for coming into the studio.